continue on this parashat, and we see that the mizvah, the direction how the woman will conceive, and this has a lot to do with the menstruation, okay, with the period of a woman that's supposed to have and supposed to be what is called in Hebrew nidah, which means separated from the man and also from a lot of things. And this has to be in the period of to purification, in other words. So we see that here the Creator said to Moshe that if she bears a male, she should have to be nidah, separated for 7 days. From where? From the Mishkan, which it happens to be in those days the tent of the meeting, or later in the latter days with Shalomo, which is the Beit HaMikdash, the same thing, 7 days. If it was a male, plus, and let's read it. I don't want to read it without even going to this. And it goes like this. Let me just go real quick. It says like this. If it was, in verse 2, it says, "Speak to the children of Yisra'il, saying, if a woman conceives and bears a male child, then she shall be unclean." How many days? If we all following up the verses, 7 days. 7 days, as is in the days of her monthly period, shall be unclean. Do you see that? Do you see the connection between her monthly period and also at the same time, after she conceives a child? But in this case, it was a male child. So look at what his verse says. Verse 3 says, "And in the 8th day of the flesh of the skin shall be circumcised, be cut, circumcised on the 8th day." But what it really strikes me is about doing a little math here. And look at what verse 4 says. "She shall continue in the blood of purification." How many days? If you guys following the reading, 33 days. Now, 33 days is very, very significant here, and we'll go there in a few minutes. "She shall not touch anything that is kadosh, or set apart, nor come to the Beit HaMikdash until the days her purification are completed." So in other words, what the Creator is telling Moshe is that if it was a male child that was born, it needed to be set apart, is separated. The woman is talking about for 7 days. It was equal as she being her monthly period, plus another 33 days. But between the 7 days and the other 33 days, in between, it was going to be the 8th day. Do you notice verse 3? It says, it will be the 8th day the male had to be circumcised. And there is something very, embedded there that we will go there a little later. Now, let's go into the verse 5. "But if she bears a female child, then she shall be unclean." How many weeks? 2 weeks. That means the double. If it was a female, it was a male, it was 1 week, 7 days. If it was a female, it was the double all the time, which is 7 times 7, 14. 7 plus 7 is 14, 2 weeks. "And then, as her period, she shall continue in the blood of purification 66 days. That means 14 days plus 66 will be 80 days. 80 days, instead of 40 days of the male, will be double of that, 80 days for a female. Now, there is a whole lot of significance in every number and every time the Creator makes an account of every single day. And as what I see here is that this Torah portion not only has a lot to do with with uncleanness, in other words, but also has to do with what is called a time of separation, in other words, or uncleanness. But one thing that I do want to make mention of is this, And this has a lot to do with a little later. We'll go there a little later. Look at what it says, verse 7 and 8. 7 and 8 says, and he shall offer it before Yahweh and make an atonement for her. And she shall be cleansed from the fountain of her blood. This is the Torah. This is the mizbah for her who bears, whether a male or a female. If she cannot afford a lamb, in other words, her social status, in other words, she should take 2/3 of doves or 2 young pigeons, the one the burnt offering and the other one the sin offering. The priest should make an atonement for her, and she should be clean. In other words, here is telling you already that the social status already, right before they went into the land of Yisra'il, the promised land, the Creator is already telling them their social status. There wasn't just one social status. It was poor and rich. That was it. Later, when the Beit HaMikdash, or the house of prayer, what is called temple, then there was the same thing, was a social status, rich and poor. And this has a lot of significance a little later, but I don't want to go there yet. Now, let's go a little forward. In this parashat, in this Torah portion, it gives me a lot to think about, because it's not just to a bunch of verses in the scriptures and blah blah blah. My question to you, to all of you who are tuning this live conference, and those who are watching later, the question is, what is the Torah for us? I mean, what is the Torah for you? What is it? What is it to you? Is it just a bunch of letters written in a Torah scroll and that's about it? Or what is it for you as a person? What is it for you when you study it? Is that just and I ask these questions because those are very, those are questions that we need to ask ourselves. Those are very valid questions that we should ask ourselves. What is it for us? Because they ask me every time, what religion are you? I mean, what are you? Are you a Jew? What are you? Are you a Christian, Messianic? What are you? They always ask me, what religion am I? And then my simple answer, and I kind of like ask the same thing to them. And the question I ask them is, what do you do? Because you obviously do go to church too, right? They say, yeah. Okay, do you go to church for 2 hours, 1 hour? And because most of the times that's what it is. They go for a certain day for 2 hours, and that's it. That was the whole day for them. My question to them is that what it is? Is that what the religion are you? Because I don't have a religion. I have what is called a lifestyle. The lifestyle, Torah is a lifestyle that we follow every day, 365 days. Even when you go into the book of Psalms, David says that I was meditating while I was asleep. And it's true. And I'll give you an example. And I said earlier in the Spanish conference earlier, and I pose the question to everybody because it happens to all of us. When you watch a movie, or you either listen to an audio or music or whatnot, and right before you go to sleep with that mentality of that movie or that audio or that music, and you literally go to sleep but thinking about what you just saw. And it's the same thing. We never stop working our minds. Even in our sleep, we are meditating. Torah and the Creator says that we should meditate in the Torah day and night, even in our sleep. So the question is, what is the Torah for us? It's just a Shabbat and that's it. It's like putting one hat and putting the other one. Is that what it is? The Torah should be a lifestyle for us. A lifestyle of learning more and more of the direction of the Creator. And the reason why I bring this up is because it has a lot to do with this Torah portion. I'm going to ask the brother to, he's going to point at the board. And if you guys, I didn't bring a PowerPoint because I want you to write it down, okay? And it is very important for you guys to write it down because it helps. Give me just a moment. So now the geometry here, the geometry of 33. If you guys go into the Torah, Leviticus chapter 12, if our brother is going to point at the board here, 12 verse 4, it says that if it was a male, the female had to be separated besides those 7 days. How many days? 33 days. 33 days has a lot to do a little later, but right now, let's just concentrate right now on the 33 days. 33 days, a little later, came to be what is called on the geometry a tamei. Tamei has a lot to do with profane. If you guys want to write it down, profane, that's 33, okay? Tuma has to do with that impure, okay? Koach means strength, okay? That's 33, okay? When it comes to the word, the geometry of 33. And also means Av, which means father, okay? Chaya means life, okay? Zabach means sacrifice. Oh, okay. Give me a second. Give me a second. Okay. You see it now? You guys can see it? Is it viewable right now? Okay. But can you... Did you guys... Okay, give me a second. Do me a favor. Can you refresh it? Because sometimes that's what it is. Go ahead and... Okay, go ahead and refresh it. Because sometimes that's what it is. Give me a... Can you see it? Yeah. Oh, it's working now? Okay, just want to make sure so I can... Yeah, it is? Okay, just want to make sure that it's properly working so I can do some refreshing here. There you go. Okay, so going back again. Okay, so you guys can see it here on the board. Our brother is going to pinpoint the board here. In the actual geometry of 33, we can actually see the same word that comes as to profane, tamei, tumah, which is impure, okay, koach, which means strength, okay, word ab, which means father, chaya, which means life, sabach, which means korban or sacrifice, and chata, which means sin. Now, un poquito más para abajo, brother. Yeah, let me do this. see it better? Yeah? Okay. Let me just do this. You guys can see it better? Better? Okay. All right, so we're going back to these verses, and we find out that these verses has a lot to do with what we see in the whole scriptures. I mean, what the Creator is doing through the woman is that He's doing a lot of cleanness. That's one of them. It's what is called the purification. That means He has to go through a purification in order for her to be restored. Remember that even today, when we see on the medically speaking, we can actually see that the blood, when it goes through the purification of 7 days, we see that what the woman is doing is purifying herself through the blood. In other words, it's sort of like transfusion kind of thing. Do you know? I work in the medical field in the lab department. And I know that when they do a transfusion, when the woman loses the blood, they have another transfusion. Or when the person loses blood, like a small amount of blood, it reproduces the blood automatically. We reproduce the blood automatically. Here, naturally speaking, the woman goes through that cycle, in other words, on what is called the cycle. That's why it's called the period, because it goes through a period of time of purification. Now, and more women know more about that than I do. One thing I want to make sure, and I do want to mention that, and I'm going to erase it here so if you guys can. Are you guys done here writing? So I can go ahead and erase it? Asakaya and the rest? Okay. Okay. Anyways, it's going to be recorded, okay? So you guys can see it one more time. Now, I do want to mention something very important because I'm going to get into the Paleo-Hebrew, which is very important. And now, in the Paleo-Hebrew, the letter, the Paleo-Hebrew or a Paleo-Hebrew, they call it. Okay, the word or the Hebrew letter, which is the Hebrew letter, which is Gimel or Gimel, okay, is number 3. Okay, which happens to be, this is the Paleo-Hebrew or Gimel, okay? Now, later it became as Gimel, okay? But the Paleo-Hebrew, it looks like a staff. It looks like a cane, in other words. Now, the letter Gimel is basically, in the Paleo-Hebrew, it's also what is, they call it the camel. The camel. Now, in that pictograph, in some of the Hebrew writings, they said that the word, the Gimel, is like a man that is searching for water. Searching for water. It's like running for water. It's running towards the water. Now, we know that in the whole scriptures, we see that, remember this, that in the Paleo-Hebrew, is basically the lifestyle that they had, our forefathers, was a lifestyle as a nomad. Remember where they live. They live in the wilderness. They one tent, they make the tent, they do the tent, and they move to another place. They were nomads. They went one place to another place. And they live in the wilderness. Camels were like a car, in other words. They were a normal thing back in those days. So when we see this word Gimel, we also see the same word, the same word we see because it's the letter Gimel, right? We also see from the same word, we see the word Go'il. Which means redeemer. Now let me give you that verse because it starts with the letter Gimel, and it happens to be in if we can actually read it, Leviticus 25:26. Okay. Leviticus 25. Give me just a second. Let me write it down here. It says like this: if your brother becomes poor, remember what it says? Remember what it says in the last parashat we were just reading? If the brother becomes poor and sells some of his possessions to his kinsman, who is next to him, shall come and redeem that which is his brother's was sold. If a man has no one to redeem it, and he becomes prosperous and finds a sufficient means to who? To redeem it. The word that comes here is the word Go'il. The word Go'il. Now we are tying the knots now together. Remember what the Torah says with the woman? That if she was poor, if she bears a child and that she was poor, she needed to come and bring 2 turtle doves or pigeons. Okay, a pair, in other words, 2 pairs. Okay, and they needed to come and do the korban, the sacrifice. But you see it here in Leviticus 25, if a man is poor, do you see that? They need to redeem which the brothers was sold. In other words, he becomes the redeemer to come for the korban. Now we tightening things little by little, and I'll make my point a little later, but let's follow up a little bit more. Now, one thing that I see here is that what the Torah says about bringing the korbans, there were many different kinds of korbans and also many different kinds of social status. Usually the social status was the poor and rich. That was basically it. But let's look at what the Torah says. I want you to go with me to Leviticus 1:14. of Leviticus, it says, if his offering to Yahweh is a burnt offering of bird, then he shall offer his offering of 30 doves or a young pigeon. The priest shall bring it to the Mizbeach, or the altar, and wings off of his head and burn it on the Mizbeach, or altar, and his blood shall be drained out in the side of the Mizbeach, or altar. Now, this is what's going to happen because the person, like I said earlier, was his social status was the poor. He didn't have a lot of means to afford something like that. Let's look what it says in Leviticus 5:17. 5:17. He says, if he can afford, 5:17 of Leviticus or Vayikra, if he cannot afford a lamb, then he should bring his trespass offering for that in which he has sinned, 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons to Yahweh, one for sin offering and the other one for burnt offering. Now we see in the pattern here, there's something going on here. And as I said, everything that is encoded in the Torah, it yields to something a little later. It is amazing. Let's continue the verses so we can tie, what's going on here. 14 verse 20, please. Here on Leviticus 14 verse 20. And the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the meal offering on the Mizbeach or altar. The priest shall make an atonement for him, and he should be clean. Now, remember what we were talking earlier, that if the person that was tamei means impure, or was in the process to be pure. The same things occurs here in this Torah portion, which happens to be about the separation. But let's look at something very important. Leviticus here, the same. Now we're going to get into the Torah portion because it belongs to this. Chapter 13. Look what it says, chapter 13, verse 1. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aharon, saying, when a man shall have a rising in his body skin, or a scab, or a bright spot, and becomes on the skin in his body the plague, or leprosy. Now, of course, in the English it appears the word, they have translation as the leprosy. But in the actual Torah it doesn't say that. The actual Torah says the skin disease. That's what it says. The translators did the transliteration as a leprosy, but it's not leprosy. It's not leprosy. The Torah doesn't say that. The Torah says there was a skin disease. Then it shall be brought to Aharon or Aaron, the priest, and to one of his sons, the priest. And the priest shall examine the plague on the skin of the body, and if the hair of the plague has turned white, and the appearance of the plague is deeper than the body skin, it is a plague of skin disease. And the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. Now, I want to make an emphasis. It's very important to make this emphasis that the priest, his main duty was to do what is called the Avodah, the service in the Mizbeach. In other words, the service of the sacrifices, to come into the Mizbeach, do the sacrifices, and do the duties that he belongs to him according to the Torah. But also the Torah says that his duty was to make a duty as a physician. Do you notice here? He was taking a duty as a physician because he needed to see the sick people, the person, a female or a male, that was ill, and he needed to examine him. He was doing the duty of a physician, to look at him. If he was impure, he needed to separate him for 40 days, it says, and after, that's what the word quarantine came from the Torah, because the Torah says that that person needed to be set apart a few days, and after that, then he will be pronounced clean. But he needed to go through that process. Now, I also want to mention that Moshe, he was brought from the knowledge of the Egyptians, the Yisra'il. He was going to be the next Pharaoh. He knew the occult, the divination. He knew those things. They knew about that. He knew about the military, knowledge. He was an architect. He knew 70 languages plus one, the Hebrew. He knew all the knowledge that he needed to know. But yet, he did not mention anything on the Torah about that. He only mentions what Yahweh told him to write down. And amazing is because I read a papyrus, and a very ancient papyrus, which is more like a recipe, more like a prescription from a physician, that it goes like this, that a man was wounded on his leg, and the physician, the Egyptian physician, is giving him some kind of a prescription recipe, and in that recipe, he needed to bring human blood among human feces, among one fly, and they needed to combine with donkey's dog. I mean, it's a whole lot of nonsense that he needed to combine, and then right after put it on the leg, the wounded leg. And as the doctor said today, well, just call me tomorrow. Do you believe that that man was gonna survive the whole entire night with with whatever prescription he was gonna put on? Not really. He was gonna die from the infection or whatever he was putting on his leg. The point is that their medical knowledge was far low than what Yahweh gave Yisra'il, which is a very superior knowledge, a medical knowledge, and this happens to be one. The leprosy, the way they needed to handle this skin disease, which is they call it leprosy, or what is called the actual word is Sahara. When he became leprosy, or they call it leprosy, the actual word is Metzorah, which is the person who had that disease, the skin disease. It's called Metzorah. Now, we see that this person needed to go through a medical phases in order for him to be healed. But the amazing thing is that here we see something amazing. I do want to mention something, okay? And it's in the Torah, okay? I do want to mention, before I go on, I know they are listening. Anybody has any questions so far? Sakaya and the rest? Okay. Okay. All right, great. So, anybody else? Okay, so we can go ahead and continue. Now, I do want to mention something important, okay? Because this has a lot to do with what is called the phases of somebody who was immune or impure, in other words. It was impure. The person who was impure needed to go through a phase. And that phase was, in other words, it needed to be healed. Now, let me bring a verse because it's a very important verse, okay? It's in the Torah. And chapter 19 of Bamidbar, Numbers 19. And this is the Torah, or in the Mizvat of what is called the Paramaduma. The Paramaduma, it is called the red heifer. The red heifer had to do the same thing, but with a person who touched a corpse, a dead body. Either was a male or it was a human, okay, or an animal corpse. Now the Torah says here, and I'm going to bring, there were 3 ingredients that they needed to put on this, they needed to combine. They needed to burn the red heifer, which is the red cow, they call it red cow, the red Baramaduma, okay? The red heifer, they needed to burn the red heifer, and a month after burning the red heifer on the ashes, they needed to combine 3 things, and I'm going to read it. Chapter 19, verse 5 and on. One should burn the red heifer in the sight, her skin, her meat, her blood, her dung shall be burned. The priest shall take the cedar wood, hyssop, scarlet, and cast it in the middle of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe in his flesh in the water, and afterwards he shall come in the camp, and the priest shall be unclean unto the evening. Do you see that? Now, the reason why they needed to do this process is because there was a reason for it. Somebody who touched a corpse. But look at what it says in verse 8 and 9. And he shall close his water, his clothes in water, he bath his flesh in water, and shall be clean unto the evening. The man who is unclean shall gather up the ashes of the red heifer, and lay it upon the outside of the camp in a clean place, and shall be kept for the congregation of the Bnei Yisra'il, the children of Yisra'il, for use in the water for cleansing impurity. It is a sin offering. You see that? It is a sin, a chata, what is called chata offering. He who gathers the ashes of the red heifer shall wash his clothes, verse 10, and be unclean unto the evening. It should be in the children of Yisrael to the stranger who lives in the foreign among them, for a statute is a chukim, a statute forever. He who, verse 11, he who touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. Now, his brother is going to point at the board. If you guys follow me here, I'm going to erase this because there is something significant here, and I don't want you to just believe in me. Please do the research. It's something embedded there in the Torah. There's a lot of secrets there, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, I'm highlighting those 3. How many days, whoever, I know there's quite a few brothers and sisters who are tuning into the live conference. The question is, how many days the Torah says that these men had to be impure? How many? 7 days, right? But here, I'm going to just bring the verse 11, okay? He who touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean. How many days? 7 days. Verse 12, he shall purify himself with the water. Look at what it says, verse 12. On the 3rd day. On the 3rd day. And on the 7th day he shall be clean. Third and 7. But look at what it says, verse 12, which just really strikes me. But if he doesn't purify, in which day? On the 3rd day. One more, let me read it one more time. Verse 12, 1912 of Leviticus, or Numbers, he shall purify himself with water on the 3rd day. On the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he doesn't purify himself on the 3rd day, if he doesn't purify on the 3rd day, then the 7th day he should not be clean. In other words, the Kohen or the priest, the Kohen Gadol, they needed to see the guy who was impure, in other words, who touched a corpse. And he said that he needed to watch it for 7 days. But in the 3rd day, if he sees that this man was still impure, that means in the 3rd day, was going to yield whether or not you were going to be pure for the 7th day or not. He was going to determine from the 3rd day that you were pure, yes or no. Simple as that. If he was going to be pure on the 3rd day, that means he's going to yield to the 7th that he will be pure. But if he determined that he was impure, that means automatically the Kohen or the priest says he's not going to be impure on the 7th, because he is going to be determined here on the 3rd day. Now the question is for all of us, including you guys, what is it? What is the Torah is trying to tell me? What is embedded there for me, the house of Yisra'il? What is it to me? What does it mean to me today, 2015? We see a great deal of it, a prophecy embedded here in the Torah. In the Torah, if we go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 8, 10, 11, it says there very clear that if the heifer ashes did not clean, much more, he says, I mean, they in fact clean in some way, but much more the blood of Mashiach, that he's greater than the heifer or the paramaduma. Do you see that? So we see something great in there. What the Mashiach did on the third day? He rised. Okay, he rise from the dead. Now, let me give you another example. On the third day, we actually determine something. We either determine that we belong to Mashiach or not. Now, why did I say this? This one determines what's coming here, because we know that there are 6,000 we know that in the year, the Olam Chesed, which is the era that we are living, is called the Olam Chesed, which is the era that we're living since the fall of Adam till the days that Mashiach will come, is 6,000 years. We know that there's an additional 1,000 years that is coming according to Revelation in Isaiah and Jeremiah, where it says that there's another 1,000 years coming, which is the 7,000 year millennium. Now, this one determines whether or not we will make it for the seventh day. What is it telling you and I? That through the death of Mashiach determines whether or not we will be in in the millennium. That's when Mashiach will come. Now, let's follow up a little bit more, because there is more to it. And I don't want to take too much on this, because I know there's questions to come. But I do want to make emphasis that the purification of the woman is really attached to, that's why one follows the other one. It has a lot to do with all of us. All of us. Let me give you a few verses real quick. Now, we see here that, let me give you the verse real quick. Leviticus 14, verse 1, okay? I'm going to write it down here so you guys can see it. Verse 1 of Leviticus. And also, since I'm already there, Hosea, it is 7, verse 8 and forward. Let's read Leviticus 14, verse 20. The priest should offer a burnt offering, a meal offering, the mizbeach or altar. And the priest should make an atonement for him, and he should be clean. If his poor can afford so much, then what is the Torah says? Verse 22 says that he needed to bring 2 turtle doves, okay, turtle doves, and 2 young pigeons. If he couldn't afford, the offering that he needed to make according to the Torah. Now, I always wonder, and it's there, it's in the prophets and the Torah. I always wonder, what does it mean about those two turtle doves, the pigeons? What's the meaning of it? Let's look at what in Hosea chapter 7, verse 8 and 9, all the way to 11, 8 through 11. Seven and verse 8, chapter 7, verse 8 says, Ephraim, he mixes himself among the nations. Ephraim is like a pancake not turned over. Strangers have devoured his strength. he doesn't realize it. Indeed, gray hairs are here and there on him. He doesn't realize it. The pride of Yisra'il testifies on his face, yet they haven't turned to Yahweh their Creator, nor sought him for all this. Ephraim is easily deceived. What does it say there? Easily deceived dove. You see that? Without understanding, they call to Egypt, they go to Assyria. When they go, I will spread my net on them. I will bring them down like the birds on the sky. I will chastise them as their congregation has heard. Now, do you see here what Yahweh is telling through the prophets? That he says that Ephraim, the house of Yisra'il, becomes like a dove without understanding. See that? Now we see something now we start seeing something very important here. The Creator is telling us something that through the Korbans, what was shown with the Torah, with the sacrifices, there is something embedded there. Let's look into Jeremiah 8, verse 6 and 7. Eight 6 of Jeremiah. I listened and heard, but they didn't say what is right. No one repents of his wickedness, saying, what I have done. Everyone turns to his course as a horse who rushes headlong in the battle. Yes, a stork in the sky knows her appointed times. The turtle doves, the swallow, the crane observes the times of the coming, but the people do not know Yahweh's Torah. Do you see that? How do you say we are wise and Yahweh's laws is with us, but behold, the false pens of the scribe has worked falsely? You see that? The wise men are disappointed and are dismayed and trapped. Now, do you see here how amazing it is that the house of Yisra'il was, instead of learning more Torah, they were going astray more into idolatry. One of the greatest sin that Yisra'il made was idolatry. But among idolatry, and I do want to mention this because this has a lot to do with this Torah portion, okay? Do you know that Sa'ara, which is called skin disease, right? There are 7 sins that are related to the Sa'ara, which is why the skin disease came. They call it leprosy, but the skin disease came. 7 sins that were well known to the people of Israel. The first one is, let's read it, Psalms 101:5. 101:5 of Psalms. And then I will give more reference, but just read it at home. I will silence whoever secretly slander his brother. I won't tolerate no one who is arrogant and conceited. Do you see that? The first one is slander. Okay? The second, you guys can write it down, 2 of Kings 5:23, which is a false swearing. That's the second. The third, or the following, is 12 verse 17 of Genesis or Bereshit, which is incest. 2 of Chronicles 27 or 26 verse 16 is arrogance. One of the things that Yahweh hates. The following is in Leviticus or Vayikra 14:36, which is to rob or to steal your neighbor. The following is envy on Leviticus or Vayikra 14:34. It's envy. That's one of the reasons why, and those are all the 7 sins that tzara, or the skin disease, came. Now, we see a pattern here. And the pattern is that the house of Yisra'il, and of course Judah, the house of Judah, was doing some of that, but what they really got worse is the Ephraim, the house of Yisra'il. Now, one of the things that Yahweh says all the time, which is resumed, the Torah resumes in the same word that Yahweh says 3 times. And he said, all I want from you, he says, that I want you to do is tzedakah, 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 which is translated as, I want you to do justice, justice, justice. They didn't want to do justice. They want to do the opposite of justice. They want to do the opposite of the Torah, which is what we call it today, a lot of gossip. They're talking about their neighbor, backstabbing. I mean, everything that you see in this world today, that was going to happen among their brothers in the house of Yisra'il. That's what they brought, more like a destruction, disbursement among all the nations of the world. Besides idolatry, which is the number 1 sin. Now we see a pattern here. Now we see that something happened here with the house of Israel. And now we come to the next thing. Now in Leviticus, before I go there, I want you to see these verses, please. In Ezekiel 36:15, okay, 36:15, it goes like this. I won't let you hear the shame of the nations anymore. You won't bear the reproach of the peoples anymore. And you won't cause your nation to stumble anymore, says Yahweh, the Master. Moreover, Yahweh's word came to me, saying, Son of man, or Ben Adam, when the house of Yisra'il lived in their own land, they defiled it by their ways and by their deeds. Do you see that? It wasn't just the way they talk, but also the way their deeds, in other words, the way they behave themselves. Their way before me was as uncleanness. Look at what it says there. The way before me was like an uncleanness of a woman, and in her impurity. Do you see that? We see the connection here. We see the connection from this PARASHAT, Tazria, the impureness of a woman. We see the same thing with the house of Yisra'il. They were doing exactly as the Torah says, but the opposite. Yahweh made some kind of connection, some kind of like a mirror. It says, just like a woman is impure on what is called the nidah, the separation, the impurity, the house of Israel did. Verse 18, therefore I'll pour out my wrath on them for the blood which they have poured out on the land, and because they have defiled it with their idols. I scattered them among the nations that were dispersed through the countries. I judged them according to their way and according to their deeds. When they came to the nations where they went, they profaned my set apart name, my Kadosh name. In that men said, these are the Yahweh's people and have left in the land. In other words, they became as a proverb. They said, look at this. They were a great nation. They were part of the whole 12 tribes. Look at them now. They became like a proverb. Verse 21, but I have respect my Kadosh, or my set-apart name, say Yahweh, which the house of Israel have proclaimed among the nations where they went. In other words, if you guys do research today, and I said that earlier in the Spanish convention, that in many of the nations, the name of the Creator is literally left there as far as archaeologically speaking. A lot of people, I mean, the name of the Creator is being spread among the nations. People knew the name because of the house of Yisra'il. But what happened is that because of their ignorance on the Torah and the total disregard of Torah, and because of their idolatry and their deeds, the name of the Creator became profane. And that's what the nations profaned the name of the Creator because of house of Yisra'il. Verse 22, therefore tell the house of Yisra'il, thou say Yahweh the Creator, I don't do this for your sake, house of Yisra'il, but I do it for my set apart name, which you have profaned among the nations where you went. My question to you, all of you, and it is, how do we profane the name of the Creator? Do we profane it because our brothers Yehudim, the Jews, they say that the way they don't mention the name of the Creator is because they say because we're not supposed to proclaim it or say it. But the Torah doesn't say that. The Torah say, yeah, you profane it by saying it, but more by your deeds. If you notice the entire verse, it says that the way they profane the name of the Creator is by their deeds, because the name of the Creator is embedded His character. His character is embedded in the name of the Creator. And it goes like this: you profane the name of the Creator among the nations. Does it ring any bell in the Brit Hadashah or the letters of Shaul? Yes, it does. Chapter 2 of Romans, it says, Shaul is telling the Jews back in those days, in the first century, he said, you claim to be a Jew, and you claim to have the Torah, and you claim to say that, and he goes on and on. You said that you are the teacher of the rest, but you said that you shouldn't be steal, but you are a robber. You said that you should do this, but you should do the opposite. And at the end it says, that's why the prophet said, and he's prophesying these words, the name of the Creator is profaned among the nations. Do you see that? It's about profaning His character, His name. Now, I do want to mention something before I go on. Verse 16 and 17, we just read it, but it says that the nidah, the impurity, that's what they were literally impure. Now, the word, and I'm going to write it down here, our brother's going to point at the board here. The word tameh, you guys can look at it. It means it comes from the same word, the same root. It means to profane. Okay? That word tameh means to literally be impure. And also the word that you guys saw it, I guess I gave it to Sakaya one time, is the word halal. Halal means to halal, you guys can see in chapter 4:26 of Bereshit or Genesis, where the word halal means proclaim, it gives a whole lot of significance in the word halal. That's what the house of Yisra'il did. They did the word halal. They literally defile, that's the word, defile the name of the Creator. Now, almost ending, Luke or Hillel, the book of Luke, chapter 2:22. When the days of the purification according to the Torah that Moshe wrote were fulfilled, they brought him into Jerusalem to present him to Yahweh, as it is written in the Torah of Yahweh, every male who opens the womb shall be called, set apart to Yahweh, and to offer a korban or sacrifice according to that which is, it is said in the Torah of Yahweh, a pair of turtle doves and 2 young pigeons. What did we see earlier in the Torah? Same thing. They were following the same thing. But if you notice here, the social status here, do you guys notice the social status? That means it is telling you automatically that the family was poor. And there is a reason why it says that. There is a reason why the Torah, in this case, it gives you the social status, but in this case, it tells you in the Chronicles Yahushua that they were poor. And to offer a sacrifice or a korban according to what Jesus said in the Torah of Yahweh. Behold, verse 25, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Shimeon, and a man who was Tzaddik, or righteous, and devout, looking for the consolation or restoration, I should say, and the Ruach HaKodesh was with him. Now the question is, he was doing this Tzaddik, Shimeon, did he knew the Torah and the prophets? Did he knew about the prophecies of restoration of the 2 houses? Yes, he did. He knew that he was waiting for the restoration of the 2 houses, yet the time hasn't come yet. I'll give you another example, and I said it earlier. In the book of Acts, chapter 1, the Shalachim, or the disciples asked Rabbi Yeshua that when was he to restore the house of Yisra'il, the northern kingdom? He said, it's not time yet. It's not your time to know the times and the season which Yahweh has appointed. It's not time yet. Now, we see that he was awaiting for the restoration of the 2 houses. Yet, we see a previous verse that the couple that is presenting Yahushua here, they presenting a korban already in advance for who? How many pigeons and how many doves? 2. We already see in the verses previously that the dove and the pigeons is referring to the 2 houses. The house of Yisra'il, the house of Yehudah. You see that? You see the pattern here? It's amazing. But there's more to it. There's more to it. 322 of Hillel, or Luke, Luke 3:22. And the Ruach HaKodesh descended from us, not like, us like a dove, okay? But not, it wasn't a dove, okay? It was like on him. And a voice came from this Shemaim saying, you are my beloved son, I am, and well pleased. Now, this was, of course, a prophecy because it's in this book of Psalms. But look at verse 23. Yahushua himself, when he began to teach, he was about how old? 30 years old. What does it say in Leviticus on Vayikra? That a Kohen had to be how many years? 30 to start on the Mishkan. 30. Now, it's super important because he was 30 years old, when he began the ministry. How many years was his ministry? 33 and a half, but indeed it was 33. Now, how many days do we see then the separation or the nida on the woman? If he bear a male child, 33. In between the 7 and the 33 is the 8th day. And we just saw it that they did the circumcision. Which day? In the 8th day, in Shemini. Now, we see the pattern here. It's almost there. Now, I want you to see this. It's something embedded here that yields to me that something important is going on. I want you to see this verse, Matthew, or Shem Tov, Hebrew Matthew, chapter 8, verse 1. When he came down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. Behold, a leper came to him and worshipped him, saying, Master, if you wanted to, you can make me clean. Yeshua stretched his hand and touched him, saying, I want you to be clean. Immediately, the person who had the skin disease, which Sarah, was cleansed. Now remember this. Back in the first century, even to the days of Moshe, the person who was Metzorah, who was leprosy, quote unquote, who had the skin disease, needed to be in a set apart place, in some kind of camp. What was it doing there? That's the question. What was it doing there that he found Mashiach? That means he escaped from where he was to look for Mashiach, because he knew that he needed to be clean. Now, but the amazing thing is that he asked, if you want, if you want, Mashiach said, yes, I do want to. And he was healed from that moment on. Now, he's healing to something very important, because this has a lot to do with us today, a whole lot. I want you to go to the book of Isaiah, or Yeshayahu 42, verse 21. It pleased Yahweh for his righteousness' sake to magnify the Torah and make it honorable. You see that? It pleased Yahweh to magnify the Torah and make it honorable. How did he do that? By doing tzedakah. When he says tzedakah, means everything. Means from doing justice, from doing that to the meek, to doing to the poor, to doing everything. That covers everything. That covers the whole entire 613 mitzvot. That's tzedakah. That's what Mashiach came to do. Exactly. Now, an amazing thing that he sees me, and I know you guys know those verses. The book of Luke, or Hillel 17:11. As he was on his way to Jerusalem, he was passing along a border of Samaria and Galilee. As he entered into a certain village, how many men were there? 10 men they have the skin disease, aka leprosy. Met him, who stood at a distance. You see that he couldn't get closer? They lift up their voices, that means out loud, saying, Yeshua, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the Kohanim, because that was according to the Torah. He needs to see. He was the kind of like the physician to see if you were clean or not. As they went, they were in the process that they were going there, they were clean. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, doing Hallel, doing Todah, doing thank you to Yahweh with a loud voice. He fell on his face to Yahushua's feet, giving him thanks, and he was, what was it? A Samaritan. Now, question is, who were the Samaritans? It was the northern kingdom. It was the house of Yisra'il. How many were they? 10. Now, what is the prophet that says about the 10? Remember, I'm sure you guys remember those verses. The Torah, and especially the prophet says that 10 men will hold in the corner of a Yahudim, of a Jew, and the corner happens to be the tzitzit, where the tzitzit go, the kenap. That's what it's called, the kenap. That's the corner of the tzitzit. And they will say, we want to go with you, and we want you to teach us, because we know that Yahweh is with you. exactly what we're doing today. We are returning back. You and I and the rest of us, we are coming back. The house of Yisra'il is returning back. What is the leprosy or the skin disease? Better off skin disease. The skin disease is AKA sin. We were dead. We were, whether we like it or not, we coming from an idolatrous society. All of us. We cannot say that we don't, because in one way or other we have. Our forefathers did. Our great forefathers did. It is what I mean. It's all over the scriptures. That's why in the book of Jeremiah says that many nations will come praising Yahweh, and they will say this, that we were tired of our forefathers inherit us. Nothing but vanity, nothing but idolatry. We are tired of it. We are tired of Christmas. We are tired of pagan festivals. We are tired of those things. We just want the truth. I'm not the only one. I mean, I encounter many people. They are searching for the truth, what is going on met. That's what we want. We just want to please the Creator. Now is the time. Now is the time that the Creator said, come, come. And that's what these parashats are for us to open more our minds of what Mashiach was trying to convey in the first century. Now we understand in the mind of Mashiach. Now we understand the mind of Shaul. What he exactly was he meant in those verses and those letters, now we understand it through the Torah. And this is the latter days. This is not the time that we need to spend in a lot of things that don't make any sense. Now is the time to redeem the time, to buy back the time. Now, there's more to it, and I don't want to go too far, but this is basically the parasha of this Shabbat, Tazria, when she conceives. And this is in reality of Yisra'il. She conceived us. We come from that lineage of the nation of Yisra'il. It's a fact that all Israel, especially the northern kingdom, is scattered among the nations. We are part of it. So the question is, do we need to go through that period of purification? We are. We are doing it as we speak. The purification is basically, we are getting rid of our old nature, our old traditions, our noise heart, because we come from a world that everybody does exactly everything. Everything is normal from them. When we coming out of that society, when they start looking at us as a weirdos. Am I right? Am I wrong? They start looking at us and, he's weird. No, it's not weird. It's unique. And the Torah says that you are a special people. The word in Paleo Hebrew means, the word kadosh means a special. We are special from among the nations. That's when people see us, they say weirdo. It's not weirdo, that's a special. Okay, that's the word in the Torah. Okay, now I'm gonna allow questions right now, Sakaya and the rest.
Let other guests ask them if they have this first, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
I know we've got 8 people on the call, 8 or 9. So if you have any comments or questions, now's the time to do so. Just make sure you unmute your phone, *6, if you had it muted. Okay, well, I'm not hearing anyone, so I will ask a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
This parashat is extremely confusing to me because I've asked this question many, many times because I believe that all Torah that applies to ourselves, we should be following and obeying today. And yet, this need to be set apart for that many days every month for a woman, and clearly longer when you have a child in a single family home is, I don't even know how a person would do that. So I would have to say I clearly am not doing that. You know, as far as waiting the days after your cycle and then doing the mikvah, my typical thing, if I remember, which I can be very forgetful, is to just mikvah in a tub with running water by myself. Now, is that even necessary, or is that even something that we do today, since the cleanliness had to do with the actual physical temple? But, you know, then my question after that, after even asking that, is that our bodies are living stones of the temple today. And so, you know, I do definitely see the deep spiritual significance of this cleanliness instruction, and appreciate your lesson today. And yet it seems really difficult to even know how to apply that today.
Okay. Actually, it's a very good question. A very good question. And well, let's look at what the Torah says. The Torah is very specific when it comes to some of the hukim, some of the mishpatim, some of the judgments and orders that the Creator have set apart for all of us. There is a reason behind every mizbah, every direction of the Creator. They always say that as a form, as a direction for all of us to follow. Now, it's a good question that you mentioned. How do we do it today? I mean, remember this, in just a backstory. All of us came, as I mentioned earlier, we came from a society that everything goes, really. There is no direction. Maybe there is a certain, in a way, direction, but not necessarily all the way through. We have merely a mirror of certain things, because it was in the past, it was followed. But then again, we don't know much about those things. And now when we come to this, I mean, the Torah, when the Torah says about how, especially a woman has to be in the process of nidah, separation, then we ask ourselves, how do we do it today? Now, it's a topic that is yet we will talk about here, because we are talking about the Morim, the Morehs. We are talking about it. We will have that talk with the rest of our sisters here, because one says this, the other one says that, but how we should apply it today as the house of Yisra'il is a very important topic. And it's not going to be a 15 minutes topic, okay? It is going to be a long, okay? But I can tell you this. I can actually tell you this, and please do research. In the ancient times, okay, in the time of our forefathers, and please do logic, okay? In the time of our forefathers, we actually see through the Torah to the prophets, we see a whole lot of evidence that the way I see in the verses when they actually use what is called the underwear, okay? I see in verses in the book of the prophets, they actually use underwear. Prior to that, they didn't. Now the question is, how did that work out? I will give you an example. And some of the like the verse that I've seen in the Torah says that when Yahweh said to Moshe that he needed to do a mizbeach, right, an altar, right? He needed to make it as a ramp, not as a ladder, so they won't see your nakedness. He says, your nakedness. Okay, I'm giving you verses. Okay, now let's make sense of things. We know that back in those days, it's not like today. Okay, today is more like, I'll give you an example, okay, because it has a lot to do with just what we just talked. Remember what the red heifer was for? Okay, you guys remember earlier that I said about the paramaduma, the red heifer, the red cow? Okay, remember that there were 3 ingredients that were in there?
scarlet, hyssop, and what else? And cedar. Okay, 3 things that were thrown into, the ashes of the red heifer, and they were blended into the clean water. I always wonder, 3 things: hyssop, cedar, scarlet. Okay, what is the significance of that? I always wondered. I know there is a great significance on symbolism and so forth, but like literally speaking, what did they do? Then I started doing research, and I happened to find out, listen to this, that most of the antibacterial soap today has, out of those 3, 2. One of them is hyssop, and the other one is cedar. Do you believe that? Back in those days, Yahweh said, you need to do this. You wanna be clean? You need to go through this process. Today is a little bit different. We see it. Why? Because there's a lot of technology has advanced, medicine has advanced. Back in those days, you literally have to go through a process of purity, of uncleanness. Nowadays, especially for women, when we talk about the woman's impurity or separation, or need that, back in those days, they needed to be separated because that wasn't the way they used, for example, what do you call those? Cortex, is that what it's called, right? Okay, this is in a form of educational point. Now things are getting more, not complex, but more simplified. A lot of things have come simplified for a woman to go through that purity, to her impurity, to her purification. Now, but we go back to the same thing. What does the Torah say? How do we apply the Torah today? Yet, we have to use the balance there. And we always say that here, the Morim, we always say that we cannot be too liberal, or we cannot be to the extreme, too orthodox, too extreme. No, we need to use Torah. We need to use the balance. Because if we don't do that, things get out of hand. And we don't want that. The Creator is the creator of balance. All He wants for us is the best. We cannot yield to the right, we cannot yield to the left. He always said, to the Torah. So the question is, how do we do it today? I remember back in those days, and that's coming from a mentality, Moreh and I, that the way that we used to do, especially the woman, when they had the menstrual period, is that the woman, if they needed to come to the synagogue, at the time to the congregation, the woman was in the period, on her period, they needed to stay. There was a small little, what do you call this? Set apart room, and sometimes in that synagogue was a room, but they had a glass through, and they could see the whole service. Now we can say, "Oh, look, she is impure." No, we don't say that. We just knew that's the time, the separation that needed to go through that. Now, when the woman had, as the Torah says, a baby, most likely the woman did not come to the congregation. It was for 40 days or 80. After the 80th day, then the woman brought the baby, and of course, he presented to as the Torah says. Now, that was back in those days. Now, the question is, how do we do things today? It's one of the topics that is yet to be discussed, Sakaya, and I will keep you in touch, okay? And I don't want to say anything more than that, but I give you thoughts how we used to do before, what the Torah did, how things were handled before, how technology is more advanced, and so forth. And that I want you to think about it. I want you to do research and everything, and also the rest of our invites to do research. We will talk about this topic that is coming very soon for all of us here, and we'll keep you updated into that. Now, that's in the literal way. Now, any other question as far as this Torah portion? Sakaya and the rest. Yeah, go ahead. Anybody there?
I'm still here. I'm not sure if anybody else has questions, though.
Okay. So, one thing is for sure is that in the things of the Torah, there's a lot of things that are unraveling as far as the how things should be handled in this 22nd century. In 2015, if some things are, vision today or not. We always have to see, not just as the Torah says, one argument has to be valid with 2 or 3 witnesses. We always have to see every angle if it does apply or not. Okay? And some of the things, of course, in the Torah, they are still vision today as we speak. Now, before we finish, I do want to mention, and I'm sure that Sakai is going to say more about that today's Shabbat, the following Shabbat, is going to take place on October the 3rd, which is next Shabbat. Now, in between October the 3rd and today, of course, is going to be Yom HaKippurim, which happens to be on October the 1st at evening, or Erev. In other words, it's going to be October the 2nd all day. It's going to be Yom HaKippurim. It's going to be a Friday all day, but starting on Thursday night. Okay? So, but our group, and many of the persons who are joining us, will join us, are invited. I don't promise you on Yom HaKippurim because it's going to be the whole day of prayer and fasting. But on that Shabbat, well, this is Shabbat, Yom HaKippurim, but the weekly Shabbat, which is October the 3rd, we will have another conference, Yahweh willing. In that conference, we will maybe talk about a little bit about Yom HaKippurim, but merely the subject will be about the Torah calendar. There's a lot of questions yet to be answered. There's a lot of people that are coming to board in board to know about the Torah calendar. There's a lot of questions that will be answered through the Torah and the prophets. And so you guys are invited for next Shabbat, October the 3rd, okay, that we will have that conference, live conference, just like today, about the Torah calendar. Now, this parasha is just a taste for you guys to see how the parashats work every single Shabbat. And it is very important for us to know that these parashats is not just a Torah reading. They are a reason for us to understand more about the mind of Yahweh, the mind of Mashiach, how everything works in the Torah. Okay? And the amazing thing is that the next parasha, the next following parasha on next Shabbat, it has to do, and it's called Metzorah. This one is Tazria, which is she conceives. But the next parasha is Metzorah, which means the leprosy. That's what it's called. But a person who's infected by the skin disease. That's basically it. That's what it's translated. Which is what we talk about today. So next Shabbat we will have that live conference about the Torah calendar. Now I'm going to leave Sakaya if you want to say the final words, or anybody there.
Are you asking for more questions? I don't quite understand.
Yeah, I was saying that if you or anybody else have the final words before we close.
Oh.
No?
For being with us and being here. It was a great lesson. I'm going to listen to it again once you post the recording and, take better notes. But thank you for your time and, talking with us. And definitely, I think we'll get us to that question of that I asked, and maybe talk about it more in depth on the Facebook page or personally, and then maybe provide something written up, because I know a lot of us women have that question, and I look forward to getting a more detailed answer on that.
Yes.
So thank you for your time.
You're welcome. And
We're still gonna have that. The discussion is not finalized yet because we are still, trying to unravel how things should be done today, not just for you guys, but here in the synagogue, because it's a very touchy subject, but it has to be talked. It's very important. It cannot be ignored. And again, thank you very much for the time that you guys gave for the live conference. And again, this is going to be it is being recorded, and it's going to be posted on YouTube, Facebook, and here in our channel. So thank you very much. We will continue the Torah lessons and the study, and I will encourage you not to just write this down. Do more research. It is encouraged. It's not just to believe the one who stands here. No, we have the responsibility to do more research, because that's what Yahweh says. You need to do more. You need to search as it is gold, as it is treasure. Okay, so we will finish. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. Shabbat Shalom. We will close with a prayer, with a tefillah. So please, if you join me. Baruch atah Yahweh, bornei melech haolam, asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav betzibanu noten chatocha. Yahweh, bless you, King of the universe, who are giving us and trusted us with the Torah. Thank you for giving us a small time, a live conference, that we will continue in searching of your Torah. Thank you for this Torah portion. You have enlightened us more and more of your Torah, and the little that we have gathered, it is great for us. And we ask you to open more our eyes to lighten us the light of your Torah within our hearts and our minds and our families and our friends and our co-workers and our jobs, so we can, as Mashiach said, be the light, a little light to the world. We ask you, Abba Kadosh, to give us more the strength and more health, so we can serve you better, and we continue in search of the Torah more in depth. We ask all this in Sadikim of Yisra'il and more of Mashiach Yahushua Emet. Thank you, guys. Thank you for everything. Thank you once again. And